Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 162 based on novel. So let's start. Once Qin Mu said that, everyone in the building sneered endlessly. Qin Mu paid no attention to it and smiled. If it wasn't great ruins separating West Earth and eternal peace, West Earth would have been long ago wiped out by eternal peace. Truth be told, your paths, skills, and divine arts have already fallen behind times compared to those of eternal peace, whose spells and divine arts are slightly behind times too in my eyes. So I'm seeking change. Brothers and sisters of West Earth, it's too dangerous to be this close to me. Not to mention those of Six Directions realm, even the brothers and sisters of Seven Stars realm, you, and you. When you are so close to me, in my eyes. He pointed at the experts of Seven Stars realm present and shook his head. You guys are all merely corpses that can move and talk. The only question is when you guys will become corpses. Everyone was overflowing with murderous intent. Yu Qingshan suddenly stood up and sneered. Cult Master Qin, how arrogant of you. City Lord Qin Mu, you are the owner of this place, and I would very much like to meet this Cult Master Qin. Is it possible? Qin Mu laughed and said, everyone here is guests attending Flowery Mountain Festival of Fragrant Bloom City, so why do we need to draw our daggers? Everyone should find a lover they admire and have a fun night, wouldn't that be wonderful? Of course, if everyone is insistent on fighting, I won't be able to stop you guys, will I? It was clear that he wanted to watch a show. Yu Qingshan walked out of the building while sneering. Cult Master Qin, come out. I want to profit from True Heaven Palace. Qin Mu revealed a smile and took out a 2-foot metal ball while shaking his head. No need to go down, it's pretty good here. He lifted the metal ball in his hand, and the building instantly shook slightly, gradually sinking into the ground. The building started to creak, and its first level sunk into the ground, followed by the second level, then the third level. Only then did it stop. Everyone was astonished and Qin Mu praised. What a heavy ball. Everyone, please take a look. Qin Mu's left hand gently stirred the metal ball as he said, this is my sword pellet. Catcher. The sword pellet split open, and 8,000 swords as fine as thread spilled out. Their tips were pointed at the center of the ball. To be able to forge something so exquisite, one not only needed to have extreme craftsmanship, they also needed calculation techniques of the same level. Cold lights reflected off the 8,000 swords, and the 4 walls of the building flowed continuously with lights. They even shone on everyone's faces. Every sword was like the most perfect work of art. Qin Mu lifted the sword pellet up, and it slowly floated up to spin slowly, allowing everyone to see its interior structure. Everyone, without improvement, paths, skills, and divine arts would fall behind times in 100 years, let alone 1,000. Your West Earth's paths, skills, and divine arts were imparted to your ancestors 20,000 years ago to awaken the soul, or spirit of all things, so they could battle by themselves. However, the activation speed of your divine arts is too slow, and even experts of celestial being realm require a fixed time to activate them. However, divine arts have myriad changes in an instant, so who would give you the time? Let me execute a sword skill so everyone here can give me pointers. Don't move. True Heaven Palace's Ting Fang sneered. If we don't move, aren't we just going to let you kill us? Qin Mu smiled slightly and said, if you want to move, you'll have to pay the consequences. Sword of Founding Emperor. The sword pellet in his hand suddenly split open, and swords filled the entire building. When 8,000 swords moved, almost everyone couldn't resist standing up to defend themselves. At that moment, all of the sword lights suddenly vanished, and along with them, even the building seemed to have vanished as well. What replaced it was a sea of blood that covered both heaven and earth. The second move of sword picture, Sword of Founding Emperor Sea of Blood. Once this move was executed, the vast and mournful feeling came sweeping over. Everyone felt like they could see countless gods and devils struggling in the sea of blood and yelling. Next, they became corpses in the sword lights and sunk into the sea of blood. Sword of Founding Emperor Sea of Blood, mountains and rivers exist, vast and obscure heart, looking around left and right, no more people donning the clothes of homeland. At that moment, they heard someone slamming the table and someone shouting angrily. There was also the sound of divine arts colliding and a brief period of clashing. Suddenly, the color of the sea of blood faded away like fleeting time, and they could see the back view of a man carrying a divine sword and turning his head back. Loneliness and decrepitness plucked on their heartstrings. The back view vanished and the building appeared once again. Qin Mu's hand was still lifted up, and in his palm was a sword pellet, which was swirling non-stop. All the plates and bowls, as well as the dishes in front of the guests, remained the same as earlier, untouched. Cold sweat broke out on everyone's foreheads, and they hurriedly looked around with frightened eyes. They saw Eugene Fang's corpse and that Ting Fang had collapsed on her seat, with a red blood stain at the heart of her brows. There was also 2 corpses of the servants. They had slammed the table in Qin Mu's sword light, and tried to contend with his sword light. The only result of that was their deaths. The other people had not moved, and so they were safe. Yu Qingshan's face was pale white, but he hadn't moved. It wasn't because he couldn't see Qin Mu's terrifying sword will. On the contrary, he had clearly felt it, which was why he didn't dare to move. Ji Ku waved his hand and there were people who immediately went forward to drag the corpses out. On the seats, everyone's faces were pale white and some were even ashen. The astonishment brought by Qin Mu's move was simply too strong. The sword skill was too fast and made them unable to react. They could only sit there, and this kind of helplessness while awaiting death was not pleasant. It was especially so for the experts of 7 Stars Realm. Even though they could let their primordial spirits leave their bodies, the battle power of the primordial spirit was too strong and the building was too cramped up. Qin Mu's sword was extremely fast, and the sword lights had drowned them before they could even react. Qin Mu's move had an immense power, and every sword had been made using the best materials, thus everyone's lives were on the line. On top of that, their divine arts of all things having spirits, and all things having souls were indeed much slower than Qin Mu's sword in activation speed. If they were to fight, they could only try to pull a distance away from him before trying to execute their arts. Because of that, in a building, they didn't have any chance at all. Qin Mu put away his sword pellet and apologized. Brother Ji Ku, I hope you will pardon me for dirtying your building. The exquisiteness of Cult Master Qin's sword skill is unmatched, opening my horizons. Even though you struck with countless swords, you didn't damage my building at all. This is then true ability. May I ask if this move is a sword move which was founded after Eternal Peace Empire's reform? Qin Mu shook his head. This move isn't a divine art from after the reform, but was founded 400 to 500 years ago. This move has also fallen behind times, but in West Earth, I can use it to kill all 6 directions and 7 stars practitioners. No one is my match. Even though everyone here is very strong, you are all still inferior to Pangong So. He is much stronger than all of you, able to take this move of mine. At most he will only be heavily injured. Everyone snorted coldly and wanted to say something, but their throats were all hoarse. Their voices were also trembling, and they immediately coughed to cover it up. City Lord Ji Ku. I have no face to remain here, farewell. Yu Qingshan suddenly cupped his hands and turned to leave. The moment he did so, other people also rose to bid farewell. Soon, the building was only left with Qin Mu and his host. Cult Master Qin, You didn't bring many experts with you this time, only a dragon Qin on celestial being realm. On the other hand, my West Earth is full of experts, so aren't you afraid of dying here? Qin asked curiously. Qin Mu smiled in a way that wasn't exactly smiling. Brother Qin knows the dragon Qin. Qin didn't reply and Qin Mu smiled. There are many people who want to kill me, but as of yet, no one has ever succeeded. My journey this time wasn't to challenge all the elites in the world, but to tour the place and explore it. Does Brother Qin know where's True Heaven Palace? True Heaven Palace is the sacred ground of our West Earth, and everyone knows it. Qin smiled and said, if Cult Master Qin wants to go there, I can point the way for you. Qin Mu gave his thanks and smiled. True Heaven Palace is after me, yet Brother Qin treats me like a guest of honor. Aren't you afraid True Heaven Palace might cause trouble for you? Qin laughed loudly and shook his head. Even though True Heaven Palace is strong, they are not at the point of behaving unscrupulously. Even though there's only this sacred ground in the whole of West Earth, it's not True Heaven Palace that's ruling West Earth, but High Heavens. True Heaven Palace won't alarm High Heavens, just for this small matter. Come, my man, gift a copy of our West Earth's geographic map to Cult Master Qin. Qin Mu grew solemn. Qin's words had revealed an important piece of information. True Heaven Palace and High Heavens seemed to have some sort of relationship. A servant came forward and offered the geographic map of West Earth to Qin Mu. As he took it, he couldn't resist asking, City Lord Qin, your manor seems to have been built in the style of eternal peace. Qin smiled. Cult Master Qin, you should go. Killing Ting Fang of True Heaven Palace, and Yu Jin Fang of Yu family, is a huge trouble by itself. Those people who left in a hurry aren't going to attend Flowery Mountain Festival, but will report and call for reinforcements. If you don't go, you won't be able to leave anymore. Qin Mu looked him deeply in the eyes and asked, how long did Patriarch stay here? Qin fell silent, then after a moment, he said, not for long. He would come once a year and teach me a lot of stuff. The last time he left, he told me he might never come again. Cult Master Qin, is he gone? Qin Mu was silent for a moment, then came to a window to look at the dragon Qin below. At this moment, the behemoth had straightened his ears and it was obvious that he was trying to eavesdrop on the conversation above. No, Qin Mu revealed a smile and said, Patriarch has probably become a god. Below, the dragon Qilin's ear lowered once again, and he just lay down on the ground with its tail spread out. Qin came to his side and looked down. He saw Xiong Qia climbing onto the tip of the dragon Qilin's tail. The big fellow then raised it to let Xiong Qia slide down, causing this little girl to giggle non-stop with joy. I've met the dragon Qilin when I was young, but he doesn't seem to remember me. Qin shook his head. You are bringing the little princess of True Heaven Palace, and you still plan to reach that place alive. No wonder True Heaven Palace wants you to be captured so bad. Do you really don't need my help? For me to become the lord of a city, I naturally have some abilities and tricks. Father had taught me quite a lot of stuff. Qin Mu walked out of the building while shaking his head. You have your own family, and I won't implicate you. Fatty Dragon, Qia, let's go. Qin saw them out of the manor and waved. Qin Mu seemed to notice it and turned back to wave back at him. Qin couldn't resist to asking one last question, can I meet him again? After you become a god, you will probably see him, Qin Mu shouted back loudly. Qin smiled while seeing them off, but his expression dimmed when they were out of sight. Every time he mentions father, he says probably. Father really is gone. The dragon Qilin, on the other hand, was very happy. He became more hardworking as he ran while carrying Qin Mu. He was as fast as lightning, much faster than he was in the desert. Even though his thoughts were far-reaching at times, he still wasn't someone like Qin. When he heard Qin Mu saying that Patriarch had not yet died to Patriarch's son, but that he had become a god, the big fatty couldn't help celebrating and deciding to work much harder. Qin Mu found it hard to lie to him. In the sea of fog in the living realm of the dead, Daoist Ling Jing was the boatman, Qin Mu thought to himself. Based on that, Patriarch should be in the living realm of the dead as well. Village chief gave me 8 Fengdu coins, so I must go there once more and find the answer for myself. He took out the geographical map that Qin Mu had gifted him and unfolded it to look around. After a moment, he found the location of True Heaven Palace and Fragrant Bloom City. He then raised his head to determine his location, and immediately told the dragon Qilin to sprint in the southwest direction. Right in front of them, a huge mountain stretched across the horizon, but it was somewhat strange. It was like a giant standing with 2 mountain peaks hanging downwards from its shoulders. But what was weird was that when the 2 mountain peaks came to the bottom, they became thick and circular, like 2 huge bells hanging above ground. While riding toward there, Qin Mu had 2 choices. He could cross between the 2 bells, or take a detour around the strange body of the huge mountain. When the dragon Qilin sprinted over, Qin Mu raised his head, and saw an elegant woman in black floating up the mountain. She landed on its top, and there was a golden paper that looked like a seal near her. Qin Mu's pupil contracted, and he saw that the woman was tearing off that paper on the mountain. Not good. Fatty dragon, rush through. Just as he said that, the huge mountain suddenly rumbled, and it raised its feet. The incomparably heavy mountain uprooted itself from the ground. Qin Mu knew that it was bad, and Carefree sword immediately flew out of the sheath behind him. The sword whizzed through the air, and went straight for the woman on the mountain peak. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. The mountain giant definitely required the magic power of a strong practitioner to sustain it. As long as the woman was killed, Qin Mu should be able to stop the transformation process. The woman turned back to take a look at him and sneered. Since you dared to kill a disciple of my Yu family, even if you are the father of the emperor, who cares? I'll send you to follow her. The mountain giant pulled out a leg and stomped on the ground, splattering mud in all directions. It then pulled out the other leg, slowly standing up. When the mountain giant stood up, the clouds were at its waist, and the 2 bell-shaped peaks were also raised. Rocks rolled down the secondary peaks, and when the huge chunks crashed down from the sky, they soon piled up on the road. The woman remained standing on the giant's head. Carefree sword instantly spun, and transformed into drill sword form, to rush into the clouds. The woman from Yu family knew that her situation was also bad. She immediately shouted and flying hoops flew out. They went to bind Carefree sword, which was rushing at her from below. Ding, ding, din, ji ding. Concentrated explosions rang out like rain. The flying hoops bound up Carefree sword and rapidly shrunk, however, they were immediately shredded into pieces by the spinning sword. The woman's cultivation wasn't weak, but the techniques of West Earth didn't take the path of strengthening themselves. Instead, they borrowed all things in the heaven and earth to fight, so their own battle power was much weaker when compared to that of divine arts practitioners of Eternal Peace Empire on the same realm. When compared to Qin Mu, this heavenly devil cult master, who had made his way by killing everything on the way, the woman was much inferior. Carefree sword was a divine sword and its sharpness was unmatched. After shredding all the hoops, its momentum didn't slow down at all. The sword pierced the woman's mandible, and came out from the other side of her head. A trail of blood appeared on the mountain peak. Qin Mu called back his Carefree sword back, but before he could let out a sigh of relief, he saw that when the mountain rocks fell from the 2 secondary peaks, they revealed the bodies of brass bells. The 2 peaks had really been bells and not mountains. They had only been covered by a layer of rocks. Even though Qin Mu had seen quite a number of such huge spirit weapons before, they were all cult legacy treasures. Even though the spirit weapons of West Earth weren't as exquisite as the spirit weapons in Eternal Peace Empire, cult legacy treasures were still extraordinary. They were treasures that contained the meticulous care of a strong practitioner throughout their entire life. That paper on the mountain peak should have been sealing this mountain giant. It should have been awakened long ago, and then sealed by its owner to suppress the precious treasure of the family. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, for he realized that their situation had just turned for the worse. The mountain giant raised the two huge bells and swung them without explanation. They collided with each other, and their openings were right toward Qin Mu. The mountain giant wasn't awakened, but simply sealed before. It always had spirit, which was why Yu family had sealed it here. When it was needed, they just had to peel away the seal and could mobilize the terrifying giant. Bang! The two huge bells collided, and a sound wave came rushing forward. Wherever it passed, the road would rise up and churn toward the dragon Qilin. However, the greatest threat wasn't the raised road, but the ringing of the bells. It was created by the collision of two cult legacy treasures hitting each other. The aristocratic family of West Earth is so fierce. Fatty dragon, don't move. Qin Mu couldn't resist praising the enemy as his vital qi burst forth. Countless runes flew around his body, then swept forward to surround the dragon Qilin. The devastating sound wave charged over, but before its destructive energy could reach the dragon Qilin, the rune markings formed a teleportation formation. With the teleportation divine art activated, Qin Mu disappeared along with the dragon Qilin. The next moment, they appeared a mile away. If it was just Qin Mu himself, he could teleport 20 to 30 miles away. If he brought a person along, he could still teleport 10 miles. However, when bringing along a behemoth like the dragon Qilin, a mile was already his limit. But the distance of a mile was simply too short for the mountain giant. With just one stride, it could probably travel over 10 miles. Qin Mu turned back to look and saw that the place where they had been at had flown up, trembling violently like streamers in the wind. Next, the road shattered into pieces from the violent sound wave. It actually destroyed over 20 miles of road, leaving nothing in its path. The mountain giant doesn't have magic power, but just by smacking the two huge bells together, he unleashed such a terrifying power. It's truly amazing. Qin Mu couldn't resist praising the enemy. The dragon Qilin immediately began to while behind them. The incomparably humongous mountain giant turned to take its first step. Qin Mu suddenly saw darkness over his head, and when he looked up, the huge foot of the mountain giant was already above them. The dragon Qilin's speed instantly increased drastically, surpassing the speed of sound with a few ups and downs. The fatty's improvement shocked Qin Mu. He didn't know what kind of spirit pills Fatty Dragon had eaten for his speed to surpass what it was in the past by so much. At such a dangerous situation, the dragon Qilin couldn't be bothered about tricking his meal owner to improve his meals. He only cared about escaping with his life, and the speed he unleashed was simply astounding. Boom! Behind them, the huge foot of the mountain giant landed on the ground, creating a lake underneath itself. The next moment, he raised his hand to smash down a huge brass bell. The dragon Qilin sprinted frantically, and the huge bell landed behind him. However, the power of that huge bell was extremely terrifying. When the sound wave entered the ground, its speed was 3 to 5 times faster than in the air. Behind the dragon Qilin, the ground exploded, and it was a horrendous sight. The sound wave even reached the dragon Qilin and blew him up in the air. Fire clouds immediately grew under the dragon Qilin's feet, and he began sprinting again. Behind him, the mountain giant swung the other huge brass bell, while the other one was raised upwards, so they would hit each other again. Bang! The bells rang out, and where the two collided, ripples from the sound wave compressed equal space into physical substance. When the sound wave moved along it, its speed got even faster. Qin Mu's hair stood up on ends, as he hurriedly flipped backward and took out Moon Jade Eye. It lit up, and a beam of light went straight at the sound wave. Whing! The destructive sound wave was split into two halves by the beam, and two waves of terrifying energy brushed past the dragon Qilin. The tremors made Qin Mu's scalp crawl, and he shivered not from the cold. If they had been struck by that sound wave, he, Xiong Chia, and even the dragon Qilin would have been shaken into countless shattered pieces and ceased to exist. West Earth still has its own knowledge, but this kind of knowledge is not good for cultivation. Qin Mu looked back and saw that mountain giant had been sliced by the beam of Moon Jade Eye. Half of its left shoulder had collapsed, and the dragon Qilin moved farther and farther away it. With the abilities of the mountain giant, it could no longer hit them with the sound waves. At that moment, the mountain giant suddenly squatted down. When Qin Mu saw that, his heart trembled violently. The mountain giant suddenly started to sprint, and its speed was simply unbelievable. My God! That's not right. There must be someone controlling this mountain giant. Otherwise, it couldn't so set on me and the dragon Qilin, chasing us like mad. Qin Mu came to realization. The woman of Yu family that had removed the seal had already been killed, so it couldn't be her. It meant that another person had to have hidden close by, and their cultivation had to be extremely high as well. Otherwise, how could they control such a huge mountain giant? Just as he thought that, a sword light suddenly flew through the sky, and a human head fell from mid-air, followed by a few sections of a corpse. It was a silver-haired old woman who had been holding a cane in her hands. That cane had also been severed into two. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He looked at the mountain giant again, and saw that it suddenly froze in place, giving up on his chase. It thus should have been the white-haired old lady, who had controlled the mountain giant in the dark to attack them. Otherwise, how would the mountain giant have immediately attacked Qin Mu the moment it awakened? Fatty dragon, stop! The dragon Qilin immediately stopped, even if he didn't understand why. Qin Mu opened cinnabar heaven's eyes to look at the mountain giant, and saw a figure standing on its head. It was Ji Ku. The sword light flew back from the clouds and swirled 2 rounds around him. Ji Ku bowed and bade them farewell. Have a safe journey. Qin Mu also bowed as a parting. Thanks for your auspicious words. The figure then raised a flag to cover himself and vanished from the top of the mountain. Teleportation flag. Patriarch also gave him one. Qin Mu smiled. He's like Patriarch. They both look indifferent to worldly rewards, but actually, they are both very warm-hearted. Ji Ku is no doubt Patriarch's son. Fatty dragon, Patriarch has a successor. The dragon Qilin stepped on fire clouds while heading southwest. Heavenly Province sect was right in front of them, and its 2 mountains were like a heavenly gate. There were all kinds of palaces on them. Yu Qingshan was heading to Heavenly Province sect, when he suddenly sensed something and turned back to see the dragon Qilin carrying Qin Mu on his back. Yu Qingshan jumped in shock and immediately stopped. His speed is so fast. If I go back to the sect and snitch on him, he might just kill me right there. The dragon Qilin stopped and Qin Mu greeted him. Yu Qingshan returned the greeting. Why isn't brother Yu attending Flowery Mountain Festival, and is returning back to Heavenly Province sect? Qin Mu asked with a friendly expression. Yu Qingshan immediately smiled at him. I'm ugly and it's hard for me to please a beauty, so there's no point in participating in Flowery Mountain Festival. Qin Mu's smile grew warm. How is brother Yu ugly? You have the look of a talent, and would definitely win a beauty's heart. It's best if you go back to attend Flowery Mountain Festival. Yu Qingshan's hair stood up on ends. The last time Qin Mu had said a similar phrase was when he had executed Sword of Founding Emperor Sea of Blood and killed 4 experts on the spot. Now he repeated it. If Yu Qingshan wasn't tactful and insisted on returning to the mountain, what awaited him was probably a sword to end his life. Much thanks to Cult Master Qin's auspicious words. Yu Qingshan gave his thanks and turned to return to Fragrant Bloom City. Qin Mu saw him off before letting the Dragon Qilin hurry up on their way, taking a detour around Heavenly Province Sect. Yu Qingshan saw Fragrant Bloom City from far away, and turned back to take a look, thinking to himself, True Heaven Palace ordered his arrest, so if my sect could take him down and make our relationship with True Heaven Palace closer, my position in the sect would definitely rise greatly. He planned to return when he saw a huge giant-shaped mountain in the barren plains. It left him stunned. He then saw the shattered roads and the destruction caused by the sound waves. Numerous experts of Yu family were flying over the limbs of Yu family's old grandmother while bawling loudly. Yu family's old grandmother is also dead. Yu Qingshan was stunned for a time, then went straight to Fragrant Bloom City. Even the old grandmother of Yu family couldn't stop him with a huge mountain, so it would definitely be difficult for our Heavenly Province sect to catch him. It is better to avoid unnecessary trouble, so why don't I just meet with the beauties? Bamboo City is right ahead. 2 days later, Qin Mu stood on the head of the Dragon Qilin with the geographical map of West Earth in his hands. He carefully checked and matched the astronomical phenomenon and said happily, after reaching Bamboo City, we won't be far from True Heaven Palace. Fatty Dragon, you have been hard working lately, running very quickly this time. The last 2 days, the Dragon Qilin didn't become lazy and worked very hard. With his leg power, traveling 20,000 miles a day, they would take half a day at most to reach True Heaven Palace. Along the way, they had met quite a lot of trouble. With the order of arrest from True Heaven Palace, there were numerous divine arts practitioners searching for his traces, and there had been quite a few fierce battles. However, a battle as fierce as Yu family's bell-swinging mountain giant did not repeat. The battle power of the bell-swinging mountain giant was simply too terrifying, and those who could possess such treasures were usually influential families. The preparation time for this kind of weapon was too long, so they had to have an awakened mountain giant in advance, or something under a seal. The Dragon Qilin's speed was very fast, so unless someone knew where he was going, it was impossible for them to prepare in advance to intercept him. On the journey, Qin Mu had experienced the strangeness of West Earth's paths, skills, and divine arts. Other than using mountains and rivers as weapons, the divine arts practitioners of West Earth would also raise some monsters. They would enlighten some strange beasts and awaken the spirits. By rising them since they were young, they would make them extremely loyal. On top of that, strange beasts were also their spirit weapons. They would be used as such, and when compared to mountain spirits and earth spirits, they were much more nimble and versatile. West Earth's paths, skills and divine arts of all things having spirits was truly an eye-opener. The Dragon Qilin sprinted, and they got closer and closer to Bamboo City. It was mostly a mountainous land before it, and they would meet divine arts practitioners rushing through the sky from time to time. Most of them were riding flying strange beasts. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows at many divine arts practitioners of West Earth monitoring his movements. We are being monitored again. Looks like we can't enter Bamboo City. There will definitely be traps laid there. We can only go through the wilderness. Qin Mu's consciousness pulsed as he used the communication method of heavenly feathers to alert the Dragon Qilin. He then took in a long breath, which filled his whole chest. Whoosh! He spewed out all that air, and instantly, fog spread in all directions, covering over 10 miles of the sky. The Dragon Qilin immediately sank into the woods. The divine arts practitioners rushed into the fog to search, but when the fog dispersed, Qin Mu and the rest were long gone. "Young master is here," a divine arts practitioner suddenly announced nervously. A precious carriage flew over, with phoenixes pulling it along. In the carriage was a youth who looked stout, but not fat. Beside him were numerous women accompanying him. What was strange was that in West Earth women were clearly in a higher social position, but in front of that youth, the women of True Heaven Palace could only act servile and not be reckless. Numerous divine arts practitioners greeted the newcomer. "Young Master Yu. This video will end here.